Good evening. It's our panel discussion. I'm here to introduce Travis Walton from Snowflake, Arizona. He's supposed to be up here, part of our panel. Mark D'Antonio, Nick Redfern, Bill Hall, Ronnie,
I wasn't kidding, it was just set away.
LeBlanc, Billy Penning, Chuck from Seacoast Saucers, and Ben and Paul Eno. So anyone has questions for any of these gentlemen, please come up to the microphone and they'll be more than happy to answer them.
Well, obviously it changed everything. It just completely derailed my life, and it's impossible to know what my life would have been like had it not happened, because everything was different. But I had the feeling that certain career choices were forever closed to me, and but as a person, it changed my perspective on the world. I mean, certainly broadened my thinking in terms of our place in the universe. The authority figures in our world at the time, it was surprising that it wasn't how I would have expected, you know. Kind of a, there's nobody up there, there's nobody driving this train kind of a thing. And there was nobody to turn to. There were no support groups at the time, and so I was kind of on my own.
The most negative stuff that we got was basically from my wife and Ronnie's wife. thinking we're nuts and why are we wasting our time on all this? But it's been a long 6-year process for us, and they've really come around and they understand. You know, this isn't just a joke. We are really finding real information, and what we always see is not always what is real. So it's been a fantastic experience for myself. I found my best friend, and it's been a great experience, and my life has done nothing but gotten better since we found those footprints and came forward with them.
I was quite surprised, because I would start all my conversations with, "I'm not crazy, but you know, this really happened," or "this is really, you know, some 70 witness interviews, etc." So I was very surprised at the reception, because even from family, disclosing personal stories or experiences that they haven't told anyone, including myself, for many, many years of family gatherings. But now that this book is out or whatever, feel that they can talk to me, and to me, that was the most surprising.
I think I would say that, you know, if you write books and you write articles and lecture, you know, there's always somebody out there who debunks things or is skeptical. But, you know, I've got better things to do, really, than worry about skeptics and debunkers. You know, you have to sort of have thick skin in this field, and if they want to shout, I'll shout louder, and if they want to shout louder, I'll shout louder. You know, we can do it forever and a day, but you know, I don't lose sleep over people who are negative. I go with the positive. I think that's the best approach to take.
There's a balance in all things. There are good things and there are bad things. Bad things happen to people and good things happen to people. In the work my father and I do, I'm not going to speak for him, he can say his own things and thoughts, but what I'm going to say is I have experienced as much good stuff as I have bad, because I would say it's more perspective. It depends on how you interpret things and what you're open to and what you're not open to. When I was younger, I took this stuff sort of for granted. I grew up in a household where this was considered normal, and having been 6 years old on, listening to all of my dad's talks, I can probably recite word for word everything he's ever said for the last 20 years.
I'm glad you listened to your father.
Yes, I do. only because I was forced to. No, I wasn't forced to, I'm kidding. I had a great time, and my dad was probably one of the biggest influences in my life. I mean, I lived with him, so if he wasn't, that's probably a bad thing. But he's a great man, and he taught me a lot of things about myself and how to deal with the unexplained, because every day unexplained things happen, and especially if they are good or bad. But I would like to say that it's easy to focus on all the bad stuff, especially if you're living, if you have a crappy job and you have to pay mortgages and horrible things like that, or pay rent, which I do. But there's also a way to think about things as glass as half full, and there's a lot of good things happening, especially in the paradigm shift, I would say. There are a lot of good things happening, and a lot of people are starting to awaken. And I think it's good to not focus on the bad stuff. There's plenty of bad things going on in the world. There's also plenty of good things too.
The paradigm shift that's happening now has to do with people in the science community even realizing that, hey, there's life out there. Saying that 30 years ago would have made you lose your tenure as a university professor, would have put you under the microscope by people that want to try and destroy your life. These days, if you don't say that as a university professor, you're put under that microscope. See, it's shifted 180 degrees.
You know, Hollywood has given us the impression that to expect things to be much more bizarre than in my opinion, think they're going to turn out to be. The laws of biology are going to be so similar that trees are going to be trees and grass are going to be grass, and you know, the skeptics are fond of saying, well, if there was an alien being, it would be a tentacled octopus. It wouldn't look anything like these two-legged, two-armed things, but that's what works. Biologically speaking, similar environments produce similar forms.
So essentially what I would say is, first, you're not alone. I think that there are a lot of people out there that have experiences. I think there are people, you know, sitting up here that initially, their first time having an experience, they were frightened, they were afraid. And what I would first say is, you're not alone. There are lots of people that have that experiences. We're all wired a certain way, and there's a strong amount of conditioning that's brought in through social media that we start at a very early age that tells you what to believe is paranormal and what isn't. Like Travis just got done saying, we call things paranormal, but really there's no para to them. They're normal occurrences we just haven't explained yet. But we don't have a name for it, and there's no reference point for what that particular thing was.
I can answer that. I think I can. One of the problems that I had, I'm MUFON's chief photo and video analyst, so I see a lot of the pictures that she's talking about, the fake ones, all the time. We have blacklisted sites even that we will never accept videos from because they're prone to just the clickbaiting. You just click on them, they make money, we lose, you know, time. Okay, but one of the things that's important is, if you're going to do this scientifically, and this is in my head, I was thinking, if we're going to do this scientifically, we can't just take a camera and get a picture of a white light going across the sky and then, because then if someone can just say, well, that was just, you know, a video effect you did to make it look like it was shooting away. It was fancy editing, or it was complete, you know, computer-generated graphic. Well, that's not acceptable. Not to me, not to anyone that I deal with. So what we've decided is to create the systems like I talked about last year, which was called UFO 2. It's a system that's a platter of instrumentation with cameras, with radiation detection, with gravity meters and other spectral meters to be able to actually identify the spectrum of something that we see in the sky. Why this? because it's not just one thing, a camera, that's capturing the image. A camera sees an object in the sky. The local gravity changes when that object vanishes, say, or the magnetic field changes suddenly, or an EMF pulse happens when that changes. This is called corroborative data, corroborating the main sighting with other data that together make true smoking gun evidence.
Well, I think that if you're trying to promote understanding from people, for people from the outside who are skeptical of such things, you need to demonstrate that we're capable of doing our own winnowing. Sigmund Freud said people need education to reality, and I really think that it really does need to be a part of our educational system, that people need to learn how you separate good evidence from bad. And some people really don't have a clue. In an election year, it really drives home that point. You say people are believing this stuff, but I was at a conference here recently, and I said, "How many people here believe everything you heard at this conference?" Show of hands. Nobody raised their hand. That was very encouraging. It comes down to two things: facts and reasoning. You can't ever just take anybody's statement at face value. It comes down to what are the facts and reasoning that led you to make this conclusion. I'll see if that will be as persuasive for me as it was for you.
I guess what the question is kind of, I don't know, something we've considered. Now, our canted approach to this whole field is based on originally being ghost researchers, quote unquote, and then being led into UFO studies by simply what happens in these cases. There is a very chilling possibility that might answer that question. I don't even like to discuss it, but I thought I may have faced it in 1974. Bill writes about the experience in the Bridgeport, Connecticut house where all these poltergeists literally attacking, and me getting the feeling that they were alien. That was the best word I could use to describe it. I mean, and it confused me because at the time I was in the seminary, we thought they were demons. But in ensuing years, it became clear to me anyway, and Ben agrees at this point, that we're talking about parasitical entities. And this came up today. Nick was talking about this in one way or another with the shadow beings and men in black, this sort of thing. So it keeps cropping up. And the chilling proposition is that perhaps, given evidence, if you accept that it's evidence, of the apparent jump in the change, 223 human genes in the human genome that shouldn't be there, if evolution as we understand it is correct, and all this stuff that may point to possible manipulation of our early ancestors, one wonders, were we bred, especially, were we created as food, as cattle? And I don't like to think about that. We find these parasites, if we're correct in our interpretation, farming families, whole communities, and one wonders you don't want to get nuts with this stuff, but what is the influence in the halls of government in some nations? The whole Bell Witch case of 1817, 1821, and there were strange lights in the sky scene, and then it was the subject of the film American Haunting with Donald Sutherland and Sissy Spacek, and I was a minor consultant on that, but I was given evidence to documents that were really scary. Were these people deliberately farmed as the things fed, just as the thing in the Bridgeport house got stronger as I became angry with it for picking on the little girl? Did these things, as they gained strength in Robertson County, Tennessee, get out there and give marital advice, agricultural advice, some of it right, some of it wrong, and all this, not to belabor it, but that's one very scary possibility of what our purpose might be. However, that being said, if that's even possible and if it's happening, there is plenty of help as well. People talk about angels and things that are positive that reflect our folklore, reflect what might be a deeper reality of various beings. Maybe they're aliens, whatever you want to call them, of a positive nature who will help. So we may be in the middle of what some of our most ancient folklore calls a battle between angels and devils, different alien races reflected in various parts of our many races. I mean, this is one of many possibilities that is, I think, rather chilling, that we're kind of in the middle, or that we're just sort of cattle. So I mean, that's start at the bottom, maybe work our way up of this.
I think, I would say I don't think we're sort of under an extraterrestrial thumb, but what I do, if they even have thumbs, but what I would say is I think it's more that we're exploited. You know, if you look at abduction cases particularly, most of them are traumatic. They're not violent as such, but they're traumatic for the person, but you don't really see much in terms of the entities doing a great deal to prevent that trauma. And also the issue of when it continues throughout families and generations. Again, I don't think we're under the thumb, but it seems to me they're almost thinking, well, we're allowed, you know, we can do this, you know, we're allowed to do this, and they don't even consider perhaps our thoughts, emotions, anxieties, or anything along those lines. Maybe they're not even properly even able to understand the way that we think, and what is perceived by a lot of people as either us being controlled or under the thumb or being manipulated is actually a reflection on their inability to sort of talk with us on a one-to-one level. You know, I mean, that sort of thing's almost impossible. If you imagine sort of talking with an extraterrestrial, you know, almost like talking to an overly intelligent dog or something like that, much more than, you know, a dog's normal intelligence, which is high anyway. So I think we're dealing with something that uses us for its own ends, but it's not like a malevolent force that wants to wipe us out. It just sees us as a commodity. You know, and I think as the human race, we don't like to be thought of as a commodity. We like to be the leader of the pack, so to speak. You know, most people probably don't think, you know, where the meat comes from in the supermarket. They just cook it for dinner at night. And I think it's the same thing. They choose to use us because they can. I think it's that simple. So.
Reminds me of an Outer Limits episode where a spaceman steps on a spider and the other spaceman goes to him and asks and says, "Why did you step on the spider?" And the guy said, "Well, I don't, you stepped on the spider because you don't understand it. You don't like what you don't understand. You knock out what you don't understand." I mean, we kill insects all the time, right? I mean, if they had thoughts, they'd be thinking, is there some sort of human agenda here? Right? They wipe us out in some places, other places they don't. I mean, what's going on? So I think Nick's right. You know, we like to think of ourselves as, we like to be number one. You know, I like to be number one. Someday. No. But yeah, but I think that's part of it is we got to think outside the box. And I would again go to the evidence pile and say I don't see any evidence that we're being taken over, or if we are bred by them, or if we are some sort of slaves or whatever. If I don't know about it, I'm okay with it. It's like, do I really have free will? Maybe, maybe not. That's a big philosophical debate. But if I don't have free will and I think I do, I'm good.
As a 24-year-old man going on 64 years old, I have often thought about existential things like this, and I think back to what Stanton Friedman said in a recording I heard of him once, that if alien beings did come to this planet and watch us and observe us, they would see us as nothing more than a bunch of warring tribes, because our favorite activity is killing each other, as illustrated by all the conflicts going on around the world. But I think human beings have an amazing sense of Some people have a very amazing ability to deny their nature. Humans by nature are very territorial creatures. We are very violent, and we can do a lot of horrible, horrible things, but there are people who are capable of very beautiful and good things, like artists, creative people, authors, writers, people like that, there is an amazing sense that humans can deny their nature and step outside of themselves and be tremendously self-aware, like some of the greatest spiritual figures in our history, well, I was going to say Gandhi, but I was also going to say the Buddha, Siddhartha, or even Jesus Christ, who we did prove does exist. Even if he wasn't a prophet or a messiah or anything, he was still a really good person who said, just be nice to each other. Things like that. There were people throughout history who have denied everything in our nature and done extremely good things. Although some of the results of that people then perverted into horrible things, but at the same time, we have an ability to be able to step back. It's just taking that time to step back.
Well, maybe I'm the obvious one to answer that. I had friends who worked, one who still does in the Vatican, in Vatican City, one in the Vatican Secret Archives. There really is such a place. And it's not like they're going to tell me. I'd be the last person they would tell. However, there does seem to be an openness now, not only to the idea of talking about exorcism and all this business, but talking about extraterrestrials. I'm rather surprised by that. I don't really know what their agenda is. The alien agenda is one thing, the Vatican agenda is something else, right? So I am in touch, trying to find out more about that. There is an awareness, or at least a perception on the part of some people at the Vatican, some of the educators, that there is a link between demons and aliens. What are perceived as demons and what are perceived as aliens. And there is in tandem, an educational effort for certain selected people, not all clergy, much to my surprise. But whether there is an awareness of and the existence of extraterrestrials. Interesting, the Roman Catholic and Protestant, or the Western theology, could not baptize an alien, talk about wildly theoretical, could not baptize an alien because they are not children of Adam. They have the black spot theory of original sin. You know, you have to be a child of Adam. If you don't have original sin, you don't need baptism. That's how it developed in the West. In the East, the Orthodox and the various branches don't have that concept of original sin. You could baptize an alien. So hang around your Greek Orthodox church, maybe you'll see somebody interesting. So, but I don't know. But that's all I know about it at this point. If anybody, if the Vatican is more forthcoming with anyone else, please speak up.
I'm Orthodox, so I'll keep an eye on that.
Oh, are you? Okay.
Yes, Serbian.
All right.
I've had people from just about every denomination say to me, this fits right in with my religion. But people from the same denomination will tell me, this can't be true, this contradicts my religion. So, you know, my conclusion was, we've got about 7 billion different religions on this planet, and one for each of us. You know, people categorize themselves as, you know, one of the 5 major ones, or maybe some others, but really, you know, religion is such a personal and individualized interpretation that, yeah, it's one for each of us.
I will just say, as part of what we do at Seacoast Saucers, we host get-togethers and social events, and one gentleman expressly told me that it was okay to share. Wow.
It's a foghorn.
Excuse me. Apparently I'm full of fog. One gentleman expressly said to me, he said, Chuck, you're more than welcome to share my story, and it's a very interesting one. In 1965, a week after the incident at Exeter, he went out, he lived in Exeter, he was 18, and he heard jets chasing something. And he went outside and he drove down to 101 and he observed an orangish colored light being chased by 2 jets. And apparently there's a number of people that in the weeks after had sightings, but for him this was once again life-changing. And he was a very religious, very Catholic man, and he at the time had gone to his priest and said, tell me about this, is this something I should share? And the information he was given in the 60s was essentially, you shouldn't be sharing this with anybody. There is no such thing. God did not make other creatures. And he spent his whole life not sharing the story with anybody. He kept it buried deep inside. And what we know is when people don't talk about truths, When they don't talk about experiences that are life-changing, it can have a profound effect. This gentleman was asked by a friend of ours, Dean Merchant, to come to our meetup group, and he started to share his story. And what he said was, the reason I'm sharing my story today is because we got a new priest recently. And the same church that had told him this was now telling him that it was okay because there were many that were created in God's likeness, you know, in man's likeness. And he then received a totally different message from the same people that were telling him that what he saw was he should be ashamed of. So long story short is I think we see things changing. We see the message changing over time, and I think it's really important. And I think it's important for people to share their truths no matter what they are, because when we hold those in, we do a disservice to not only ourselves, but to everybody else.
Thank you.
I have to say every time, for me.
I'm Willie Miranda, and this will be concluding the panel session. And I'd really like to thank everybody who came here to took their time to come to the conference today. Our esteemed panel, which I consider world-class, right behind Mark.
Hey,
and,
multiversial class.
Hey, remember, I'm the first one. Now, I'd like to thank all the volunteers. They're all around here. Ed, Dennis, please stand up. Leanne, out back. Nelson back there. Right, Nelson? And a huge round of applause to Susan and Tommy Neal. They put this together. You know, it's not an easy task to bring this together, bring this many, this much talent in one place. You know, and we do it all for, because we love it. You know, we really do. And thank you for your time. And thank you, speakers.
Thank you.